My name is Nathan Clark. I'm 37, living in Denver, and I've been married to Kelly for almost a decade. We met at a friend's housewarming party when we were both in our late 20s. She was sharp, confident, had this laugh that turned heads across the room. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, and maybe for a while I had. I work as a senior analyst for a mid-sized software company. It's the kind of job where no one really knows what you do, but everyone assumes it's important. It pays well, comes with good benefits, and most days I can keep my head down, do the work, and go home without any drama. For a long time, I thought that kind of stability was enough to keep things solid at home, too. Kelly works in corporate communications for a well-known marketing firm downtown. Her world's always been flashier than mine. Sleek suits, bright lights, networking events, endless business trips. She thrives in it. That used to make me proud. Lately, I've started wondering if it made me naive. It was a Thursday when it all began to unravel, though I didn't know it at the time. That day, I had a meeting scheduled with a difficult client who'd been dragging their feet on finalizing a contract for months. We were all on edge, preparing for the usual dance, but then, right before lunch, they canceled. No reason, just a vague rescheduling notice. Felt like a gift. Instead of sitting around the office the rest of the day, I decided to leave early. I hadn't seen Kelly much that week. She'd been working late the past 3 nights, and when she did come home, it was always after 10. She'd head straight to the shower, then collapse into bed, barely saying a word. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe take her to dinner, reconnect a little. We hadn't done that in a while. Her office was only 20 minutes from mine. I stopped on the way and picked up 2 coffees, hers with oat milk and cinnamon, always, and headed over, smiling to myself like some idiot in a romantic comedy. The parking lot was about half full. Her car was there, parked near the back, same spot she always took. I remember thinking, good. She's still here. It was around 3:45 p.m., a few more hours before the place would clear out. When I reached the front desk, the receptionist gave me a polite nod. She knew me. I'd been to a couple of their holiday parties over the years, back when Kelly used to insist I come. I told her I was here to see Kelly, and she buzzed me through without a second glance. As I walked toward her department, I passed rows of cubicles and glass-walled offices. Most people were typing or on calls, eyes locked to screens. Business as usual. And then I saw them. Through the clear panel of the side conference room, one they usually used for small meetings or one-on-ones, I spotted Kelly and her department head, Robert Morris. I'd met him a handful of times before. Late 40s, silvering hair, too confident for his own good. He always seemed like the type who said just enough to sound charming but left you second-guessing his intentions. Kelly was standing close to him, shoulder angled toward his chest. She was smiling. Not the usual polite office smile, but the real one. The one I hadn't seen in a long time. Robert had one hand in his pocket, and the other was resting on the small of her back. Not just resting low. Too low to be anything but personal. Time didn't stop, but it sure felt like it slowed. My stomach dropped, and my hand tightened around the coffee cups. I froze just a few feet from the glass. They hadn't seen me yet. I felt like I was watching someone else's life. And then Kelly's eyes flicked up, caught my reflection in the glass. Her body jolted slightly, like she'd been pinched. She stepped away from Robert with a quick, awkward smile and pointed at something on the screen behind them. Her voice, muffled by the glass, was sharp and rushed. She was explaining something, gesturing like it was all very official. Robert's expression changed fast. He put both hands behind his back and nodded, lips tight. Just 2 co-workers going over a report. I walked in slowly, trying to keep my face neutral. Kelly turned to me and lit up with forced surprise. "Hey, babe, what are you doing here?" "I had a meeting cancel," I said, holding up her coffee. "Thought I'd swing by, maybe take you to dinner." "Ah," she said, stepping forward to hug me. "You didn't have to." She hugged me too tightly. It was the kind of hug you give someone when you're performing affection, not feeling it. She made a point to kiss my cheek. Right there in front of Robert, like she was planting a flag. Robert nodded at me, Nice to see you again, Nathan. Yeah, I said, barely looking at him. You too. He made some excuse and left the room. Kelly leaned into her work persona instantly. Robert and I were just going over the quarterly projection decks. Big campaign launch next month. Stressful but exciting. I gave a tight smile and handed her the coffee. We didn't talk much on the way out. I asked if she wanted to grab food, and she hesitated just a second too long before saying, "Sure. Yeah. I could use a break." But the rest of the afternoon felt off. She kept checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. At dinner, she picked at her salad and asked me about my day with a mechanical kind of interest. Her eyes weren't really on me. I kept replaying the moment in that office. That touch, her laugh, the shift in her eyes when she saw me standing there. It was like walking in on a joke you weren't meant to hear, except you're the punchline. When we got home, she said she was exhausted. Went to bed early. I stayed downstairs watching TV I didn't care about, sipping a beer that tasted like water. There was no confrontation, no fight, but a wall had gone up inside me. One I couldn't explain, even if I wanted to. That night, lying next to her, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, wondering when exactly things had started to turn, and why I hadn't noticed until now. After that afternoon in Kelly's office, things didn't explode, they eroded. That's the best way I can describe it. Not a firestorm, not a confrontation, just this slow, persistent peeling away of everything I used to recognize. I didn't say anything to her about Robert, not that night, not the next morning. Maybe I didn't want to believe what I saw. Maybe I was still hoping it was nothing. But deep down, something had shifted. Something in me had crossed a line. Over the next few days, I noticed more than I wanted to. Things I probably would have overlooked before now stood out like neon signs. She stayed late at the office again the next night. And the night after that. I remember watching her pack her bag, slipping her laptop in while brushing her hair out of her face. She used to wear minimal makeup for work. Now she had this new routine. Flawless foundation, winged eyeliner, deep red lipstick she used to only wear on date nights. Her heels clicked louder than I remembered. Her perfume, once subtle, now lingered in the air long after she left. It smelled expensive, spiced, assertive. "You working late again?" I asked that Thursday. "Yeah," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Big deadlines. We're behind on client deliverables." She used to explain her work to me. Now everything was vague. Projects, strategy meetings, crunch time. I didn't ask more. I just watched her leave. That weekend we had dinner with our neighbors, Beth and Carter. They've been married for 5 years. Younger couple. Still in that let's host game night phase. Kelly laughed a little too hard at Carter's jokes. She spent most of the night scrolling through work messages while pretending to listen to Beth's updates about their new dog. When we got home, I asked her if everything was okay. Just a simple, "You doing all right lately?" She looked up, startled, like she hadn't expected me to ask. "Yeah, why?" "You just seem distracted." She blinked. "I've just got a lot going on. I told you that. You know how Q4 is, right?" Q4, the corporate catch-all for every excuse. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again while she typed away on her laptop next to me, headphones in, completely absorbed. The glow of her screen reflected off her face, making her look almost distant, like she wasn't really here, like we weren't really us anymore. I started remembering things I'd brushed off before. Moments that didn't seem like much at the time but now felt like breadcrumbs leading to something bigger. She used to ask me to try on outfits before buying them. She wanted my opinion. Lately, she just came home with new clothes. Tailored blazers, tight pencil skirts, heels taller than she usually wore. Her style shifted. No more soft sweaters or yoga pants. Now it was all sharp angles and statement pieces. Even the way she talked changed. She started throwing around phrases like personal branding and executive energy. One night, she gave this long monologue at dinner about the importance of leading through vision and how her team was evolving past outdated dynamics. I half joked, Are you managing people or writing a TED Talk? She didn't laugh, just shrugged and said, it's the new direction. We're focused on integrity and transparency. I almost choked on my water. Transparency? This coming from the woman who now took her phone with her everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, backyard didn't matter. Always face down. Always silenced. It didn't used to be that way. There was a time when we shared playlists, memes, random texts during the day. I'd scroll through her camera roll to find a photo she took of our dog, and she'd never flinch. Now, her whole digital world was off limits. One night, I picked up her phone by reflex. It buzzed, and I thought it might be an alarm. She saw me with it and snapped, "Can you not touch my stuff?" It wasn't what she said. It was how fast it came out. Like instinct. Like guilt dressed as defensiveness. I apologized and handed it back. She didn't say thank you, just took it and turned away. The next morning, she brought home this printed document. A laminated poster with phrases like radical honesty, mutual accountability, and clarity above comfort. She said it was part of a new team policy she rolled out at work. Said she wanted to model ethical communication in every layer of the organization. I remember staring at it, blinking. "Is this your manifesto now?" I asked, half teasing. She smiled but didn't answer. Just pinned it to the fridge like it belonged there, next to our grocery list and a photo of us from our trip to Sedona. That smile felt rehearsed, like she knew I wouldn't buy it but didn't care enough to make it real. That's when I started writing things down. Not because I was paranoid, because I didn't want to gaslight myself. The first entry was the afternoon in her office. The hand on her back. The laugh. The look on her face when she saw me. Then I started adding more. Late nights. Unlocked car GPS routes. Random expenses from wine bars she didn't mention. New lingerie receipts buried in the trash. A mystery scarf in the back seat of her car that didn't belong to her. It became a quiet ritual. A little notebook hidden in my sock drawer. My sanity log. My proof. I wasn't ready to accuse her of anything. I didn't want to be that guy. Jealous, insecure, reading into shadows. But it wasn't shadows anymore. It was daylight, and I was the only one still squinting. I even asked my best friend Derek about it over lunch. He said, "You're overthinking, man. Kelly's intense. Always has been. That doesn't mean she's cheating." I nodded, smiled, took another bite of my sandwich. But Derek hadn't seen her face that day in the office. He hadn't heard how she now said "love you" at the end of calls the same way she signed emails. Punctual, polite, and empty. She used to whisper it while touching my cheek. Now it sounded like an automated response. I started coming home early, just to see if she'd react. She didn't. She started locking her office door when she worked from home. She stopped calling me during her lunch breaks. She started scheduling team-building weekends without asking if I wanted to come along. "Just internal stuff," she said. I started keeping receipts. Literal and metaphorical. I still remember the worst moment. It was so small, so dumb. But it hit harder than anything else. She brought home sushi one night. My favorite kind. We used to eat it while watching old Seinfeld reruns. Comfort food. Tradition. That night, she handed it to me and said, "Here. This is your usual, right? Your usual. Not our thing. Not the one you love. It was the way you talk to a coworker, not a husband." I nodded. Ate in silence. She scrolled on her phone the entire time. We hadn't laughed in weeks. We hadn't kissed like we meant it in months. We were roommates sharing a mortgage. And I was starting to believe the only thing we shared anymore was the sinking feeling neither of us wanted to name. But I knew the truth was coming. I could feel it. Not like a storm. More like the hum of an earthquake you can't hear yet, but the ground's already shifting under your feet. And once it came, there'd be no pretending anymore. The truth didn't arrive with a bang. It snuck in like a thief. It was a Wednesday night, late. Kelly was working from home, which had recently become code for long stretches of silence behind her office door. She said she had a client presentation the next morning and needed to polish the deck. I offered to help. She waved me off with a half smile, telling me it was just internal stuff. Something about her tone told me not to push. I was downstairs watching a game I wasn't really watching. I kept glancing toward the ceiling, trying to guess which parts of the house she was moving through. Eventually, I heard the muffled sound of her office chair rolling across the hardwood. Then footsteps. Then the door creaked open, and I saw her shadow in the hallway. She passed by the stairs without looking down. When I came up about 10 minutes later, the light in our bedroom was still on, and the door was half open. Kelly had fallen asleep on top of the covers, her laptop resting on her thighs. One headphone was still in her ear, the other dangling down her shoulder. Her breathing was deep, her chest rising in that slow, unguarded rhythm you only get when you're out cold. I stood there for a long moment trying to decide what to do. Then I noticed the laptop screen was still on. She hadn't closed anything. I told myself I just didn't want the computer to overheat, that I was doing her a favor. But even as I reached for it, my hand was already shaking. As I bent to move it off her lap, the screen flickered. Then a message popped up in the corner. Some kind of chat app one didn't recognize. Your presentation today was fire. Berlin has nothing on you. Your room's ready. Sent by our Morris. I went still. I looked at Kelly, still sleeping, her hair tangled across her cheek. Then I looked back at the screen. The message just sat there, innocent looking, like a regular work chat. But I knew what I'd seen. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what Berlin meant. I didn't know which room he meant. But I knew who he was. And I knew that no one texts a married woman that kind of message unless they're playing a role they shouldn't be playing. Then another one came through. Can't wait. This time it was from her. I could barely breathe. I clicked open the chat window. The thread was long. Not constant, not every day. But frequent enough. Professional in some places. Casual in others. Then personal. Flirty. Teasing. Coded. I hope you pack better this time, winky face. You better have that rooftop bottle ready. You're not the only one who misses the silence. My vision blurred. I scrolled back up. The timeline was clear. The weekend she said she was at a leadership summit in Chicago. There was a picture. A mirror selfie in a hotel robe. Sent at 1:14 a.m. Her caption said, "Long day. Worth it." Robert had replied, "That view makes it worth it." It wasn't just one night. It wasn't just one trip. This had a system, a rhythm, pattern. Dates matched her calendar. Places matched her excuses. One time she told me she was stuck in a meeting, and I now had a time-stamped message of her texting him, "Still in bed. Let's not move yet." I went cold. There was no mistake, no drunken error. This was calculated, confident, hidden in plain sight, and suddenly, everything clicked. The long nights, the new clothes, the way she checked her phone with her face turned away. The defensiveness. The shift in her tone when she said, "I'll be home late." She hadn't just cheated. She'd cheated methodically, with precision. She'd built a second life on top of the first and kept smiling through it all like nothing was wrong. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. I wanted to wake her up and yell, "Who are you?" I wanted her to see what I saw and explain why she felt like I didn't deserve the truth. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat there, staring at the screen, reading every word until I couldn't read anymore. Then I closed it. I placed the laptop back on her lap like nothing had happened. I stood up, walked out of the room, and sat in the hallway. The house felt like it had changed. Like the walls knew something I didn't. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was electric, threatening, pressed in on me from every direction. I stayed there for an hour, just thinking, playing every moment back in my mind, trying to find where it started. The cracks were always there. I just didn't want to see them. The thing that hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was how easy she made it look. She hadn't been torn about it. She hadn't stumbled. She had managed it, like another project on her plate. Somewhere along the line, she had decided that whatever we had wasn't enough. And instead of fixing it or ending it or even discussing it, she built an escape hatch with another man. And the man she chose? Her boss. Someone I'd shaken hands with. Someone I'd made small talk with at holiday parties. Someone who once told me, "You've got a good one." I almost laughed. I wanted to be angry. I was angry, but it didn't feel like rage. It felt hollow, like staring at the wreckage of a home and realizing you don't even miss the furniture. You just can't believe it's all gone. Eventually, I got up, went to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. I looked out the window into the dark. Nothing moved. The world didn't care. Kelly woke up the next morning and didn't say a word about the messages. She came down in her robe, kissed me on the cheek, poured her coffee, and scrolled her phone like nothing had changed. Maybe to her, nothing had. She'd lived in that lie long enough to feel comfortable. But I wasn't comfortable anymore. That day at work, I couldn't focus. My screen blurred. The numbers didn't matter. The graphs didn't make sense. I kept looking at my phone, half waiting for another message from her to someone else. But I didn't have her passwords. I didn't have her accounts. Just one open window, one moment of sleep, and now I knew everything. The illusion was broken. When I got home, she was already upstairs, laughing on a Zoom call. Something about client messaging and cross-department flow. Her voice had that fake pep she used when she was winning over a room. The voice I used to love hearing. Now it made my skin crawl. I looked around the kitchen, where the fridge still held that laminated list of team values she'd brought home a week earlier. Honesty, transparency, accountability. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. She had *p***nized those words. She'd used them to hide the very thing she refused to give me. That night, I started planning. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just clarity. The kind she refused to offer me but insisted everyone else follow. If she was going to play her life like a strategy game, I was going to learn the rules. And I'd play better. Because now I knew the truth. And I was done pretending I didn't. When I found the messages, I thought the shock would fade. It didn't. It hardened into something colder, something that felt like strategy. The night after I read them, I didn't confront Kelly. I didn't shout or demand explanations. Instead, I waited. I watched. She'd always underestimated how much I noticed. She thought my quiet meant obliviousness, that silence meant surrender. What she didn't realize was that silence could also be preparation. While she was out at another meeting that Friday night, I sat down at our shared computer, the one connected to our cloud storage. Kelly had insisted we set up that system so she could access files from home. Her company used Google Workspace, and she'd synced a folder for team projects. What she didn't realize was that, buried in the sync settings, there was a mirrored cache, a backup that stored every version of her synced files, including ones she deleted. It wasn't hard to find. At first, it was boring budgets, press kits, slide decks. Then I found a folder labeled Legacy Reports. Inside were PDFs and spreadsheets with altered timestamps. And tucked between them, a subfolder named Conference Materials. There were receipts, invoices from hotels in Chicago, Austin, and San Diego, all with her name. Some also listed Robert Morris on the reservation. Same dates as her supposed work trips. I kept scrolling. My pulse thudded in my ears. Then came the chat logs, saved exports from the corporate messenger app. She must have downloaded them for reference, maybe to cover her tracks, maybe just careless syncing. I opened one. It was dated 2 weeks before I found the messages on her laptop. Robert, client dinner went better than expected. You made an impression. Kelly, flattery gets you everything. Robert, you're learning. That's dangerous. Kelly, dangerous can be good. The messages went on like that, coded but clear enough. She'd built her affair like a second job. Meetings disguised as strategy sessions, weekends as offsites. She was meticulous, efficient, almost proud of how well she managed the narrative. I didn't feel heartbreak anymore, just disbelief. Admiration even for how easily she manipulated perception. But she'd made one mistake. She thought her control was absolute. I started pulling everything: emails, documents, timestamped travel logs. I organized them into a single folder on my desktop. I labeled it Q4 Review. It wasn't even subtle, but she'd never think to open something that dull. As I worked, I remembered something she'd said a few weeks before. People only respect order when you enforce it. At the time, I thought she was talking about management. Now I knew she was talking about me. When she got home that night, I was sitting on the couch, watching the muted glow of the TV. She leaned down, kissed the top of my head, and said, "You're up late." I smiled. "Just working." She went upstairs. I listened to her heels on the hardwood, the zipper of her purse, the sound of the shower running. I wondered if she'd look at herself in the mirror afterward, and if she'd recognize what she'd become. The next morning, she left early again. Said she had team reviews. I didn't ask. As soon as the door shut, I opened the file sync again. She'd been editing documents, project budgets, expense justifications, and proposals. She was changing numbers, covering inconsistencies. I started connecting dots. The affair wasn't just personal, it was professional. She was using company resources to fund her trips with Robert. Flights, meals, hotels, disguised as client expenses. That was her real vulnerability, not the cheating, the fraud. By noon, I had everything copied. Every altered document, every overlapping transaction. I packaged them into a folder labeled Integrity Initiative. Then I wrote a note, short, sharp, deliberate. To the audit team, please find attached records of discrepancies in the Q3, Q4 reporting data. Anonymous. I sent it from a throwaway email. By the following Tuesday, the storm hit. I didn't hear it directly from Kelly. She was too good at pretending things were fine, but I saw it in her face. The tension, the forced calm. That morning, she came into the kitchen wearing one of her immaculate suits. Navy, sharp lines, silk blouse. But she looked different, paler, eyes tight. "Everything okay?" I asked, pretending to sip my coffee. She hesitated just long enough to confirm everything I needed to know. "Work drama," she said finally. "Someone flagged inconsistencies in one of our reports. It's nothing. Nothing serious, I hope." She gave a stiff smile. "We'll handle it." I nodded. "I'm sure you will." That evening, she came home late, later than usual. I was still up, reading at the table. She didn't greet me right away. She poured herself a glass of wine, downed half of it, and stared out the window. "Rough day." She laughed once, dryly. "You could say that. Want to talk about it?" She turned, studying me, maybe wondering if I knew more than I should. Then she shook her head. "It's just work politics. Nothing worth explaining." "Right?" I said softly. "Transparency only works one way." Her jaw twitched. She didn't respond. She just left her glass in the sink and went upstairs. I followed her later. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in her work clothes, staring at her phone. I could see her reflection in the mirror, her face lit by the cold glow of the screen. She looked like someone trying to fix a puzzle that had too many missing pieces. Over the next week, the fallout grew. She started working from home again. Long calls with HR, whispered phone conversations that stopped when I walked in. I never said a word. I let her sit in her chaos. And every night, I added to my file. Screensh *TS of company updates. Internal memos she left open. The slow unraveling of her empire. She didn't know it, but I'd already written the last chapter. One evening, as I sat on the couch, I thought about what I was doing. Whether it was revenge. Whether it made me just as calculated as her. But the truth was, I wasn't trying to destroy her. I just wanted the truth to do what it always does. Burn quietly until nothing false remains. A week later, the company announced an internal audit. Rumors swirled about misconduct, falsified data, potential disciplinary actions. Kelly didn't sleep that night. She kept pacing the bedroom, muttering, "They'll find out it wasn't me. They'll see it was the system." But it wasn't the system. It was her. And she'd built it too perfectly for anyone else to blame. By Friday, the project she'd spent a year building was suspended. Clients withdrew. Contracts froze. Robert resigned for personal reasons. Kelly came home that night pale as paper. She sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling. "They think I leaked something," she whispered. "Someone planted documents. I don't know how." I didn't answer. I just watched her. For once, she looked small. That was the moment I realized I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to expose her to the world. The world was already doing it for me. Her empire of lies was collapsing. Not from vengeance, but from gravity. Everything falls eventually, especially what's built on deception. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Because control, in her hands, had been a wee *p*n. But in mine it was freedom. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't ask her why or how or what it meant. I just made coffee. That morning, after the audit rumors turned into action and Robert Morris was officially on leave pending review, Kelly sat at our kitchen table staring at a piece of toast she hadn't touched. Her eyes were *T. Her blouse was wrinkled. She'd spent the night pacing. Again. At around 2 a.m. I heard her crying softly in the bathroom. She didn't think I was awake. I woke up early, moved around the house like I always did, showered, dressed, fed the dog, turned on the coffee machine. The normal routine felt like armor. I didn't say much, just poured her a mug the way she liked it. Splash of almond milk, no sugar. Then I walked into the office, picked up the folder I'd prepared, and set it gently on the kitchen table beside the coffee. She looked down at it like it was radioactive. The cover said nothing. No title. No label. Just a plain gray folder, the kind you'd find in any home office. She didn't open it right away. She just stared at it. "What's this?" she asked, her voice low. "Everything," I said. She blinked. Her hand hovered over it like she was afraid to touch it. "Everything what?" I sat down across from her. Calm. Quiet. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel fury. I didn't. Dates. Conversations. Hotel receipts. Expense reports. Your messages with Robert. The Chicago trip. The Austin one. San Diego. Even the one where you told me you were helping Lauren move, but you were in a suite at the Sheraton. Her face drained of color. "Nathan, I'm not here to argue," I said. "Not here to scream. Not even here to ask questions. Everything I needed to know I already found." She reached for the folder, flipped it open. I saw her eyes move over the first page. The time-stamped chat messages. Then the photos, not of her and Robert together, but side-by-side metadata from synced files, matching her trips with the same names, the same bookings. Every page confirmed the next. A perfectly curated archive of betrayal. She flipped faster. Her hands shook. Her breath hitched in her throat. When she reached the last page, she just sat there, staring. I let the silence stretch. "I never meant for it to happen," she said finally, eyes not leaving the paper. I nodded. "That's the first thing everyone says." She swallowed. "I thought it would stop. I told myself it was just a phase, a mistake." I leaned back in the chair. A mistake is something that happens once. You made decisions. You made schedules. She looked up at me for the first time. "I didn't want to lose us." I smiled at that. It wasn't kind. You already had. You just didn't notice. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. Neither of us touched our mugs. She tried again. "Nathan, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was under pressure. Robert, he made it easy to feel seen." "Stop," I said. Not angry, just done. "You don't have to explain it. Not anymore." "But I want to." "No," I said, and this time my voice was firmer. "You want to rewrite it. But you don't get to. You wrote it already. It's all right there." I gestured to the folder. Her hands fell to her lap. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I stood up, walked over to the hallway, grabbed my overnight bag. The one I'd packed 2 days ago, before she even knew I knew. I brought it to the kitchen and set it down by the door. Her eyes widened. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere else," I said. "Somewhere I can hear my own thoughts." She stood too fast. "Wait. Nathan, please just let us talk this through." I made a mistake. I know that, but we can fix this. No, I said, shaking my head. You broke it. Not me. And you didn't just break it, you planned it. You lied for months. You hid it in meetings and spreadsheets and laminated values about honesty. I panicked. Her voice was cracking now. When I saw everything collapsing, I didn't know what to do. You could have told the truth, I said. That would have been a start. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Her voice dropped. Please don't leave like this. I picked up the bag. There's no good way to leave someone who never really came home. Her knees buckled. She sat down hard in the chair. Nathan. I walked to the door, paused, turned around. You know what the worst part is? I asked. She looked up, eyes red, lips trembling. I waited, I said, even after I knew. I waited to see if you'd tell me the truth on your own. I gave you days, weeks. You had every chance to come clean. I was scared, she whispered. No, I replied. You were comfortable, and with that I left. No slamming doors, no dramatic exits, just a quiet close behind me. I drove with the windows down. The air was sharp, clean. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Stillness. Not peace. Not yet, but stillness. I stayed at a friend's place that night. He didn't ask questions. I didn't explain. I just needed space. A room that didn't smell like lies. That night, I sat on the guest bed and opened my phone. There were already texts from Kelly. Missed calls. Voice messages. One after the other. I didn't open them. I let them pile up. I opened the Notes app instead and wrote one line. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. The next morning, I woke to 10 more texts. The one that stuck out was the shortest. You didn't even scream. She was right. I didn't. Because screaming would have meant I was still fighting for something. But I wasn't. I was done. A few days later, she claimed she was helping a colleague move. I followed. Same hotel, same Robert. I took photos, plate number, timestamp, room. No emotion, just proof. That night, I left the divorce papers and a letter from my lawyer on the table. She came home to silence. I didn't answer her calls. We weren't us anymore. We were just evidence. A week later, I moved out. New place. No furniture, no memories, just space. She lost more than our marriage. She lost her job. The audit caught everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of leveling everything. I wasn't starting over. I was finally standing still on solid ground. And for once, it was honest.